All right, everybody, welcome my friend from Long Beach, Andy Dane Carter, the man with 3 first names. I love it. If you don't know, this guy is an absolute beast. 450,000 plus followers on Instagram alone. I think an even more impressive number, he's got like 140,000 subs on YouTube. He's been keynote speaker in every major organization I can think of. Originally a real estate investor and, if I remember correctly, a restaurant entrepreneur, and then transitioned into real estate. So a completely different perspective on real estate than the regular Joe. Obviously an author, a successful author with, I believe it was called 100 Homes, or I'm going to pull it up for everybody here as well. Yeah, man, thank you so much for being a part of another Summit series. It's the second one you've done for us, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, man, thank you so much for being a part of it.
100%, brother. Thank you so much for having me. Love your crew, team, your vibe, your energy. You guys are doing it right up there, I'm telling you. I've been watching too for a while.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm going to be all over the place today. So it's literally how my brain works. I just kind of go and roll. So I'm going to cover like probably 4 to 5 different pillars. A big one is going to be social media, branding, how to get out there, how to get your fears out of the way and just kind of go. And then also like treating your business like a business is something we hear at all these seminars, and you should be an entrepreneur and you could do it. Like, I got it, but you have to do this. This is a business. You have to run it like a business. But I'm also going to talk about the piece that no one talks about is what's your exit strategy for real estate? Do you know how many 60, 70, and 80-year-olds that I know that I have these conversations with? They're like, I'm just going to do more deals. I'm like, until when? Like, until when? The beautiful thing about real estate is the freedom it can create, and there is no ceiling. You want to make as much as Tom Brady? No problem. You can. It doesn't matter. So I love this industry. So quickly, as like a backstory about me, I'm going to kind of give you like the compressed version because it is kind of long. So like super simple. I was the poor kid. I was raised super poor by a single mom. Man, did we struggle. Man, we struggled. It was me, my mom, my little brother. We had nothing. We lived in a teeny tiny little studio on like the wrong side of the tracks. You know, I didn't look like anybody in the neighborhood. Like we struggled, but it created this grit in me that's like indescribable. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I started working really, really young, right? I started working when I was 12. There's a crazy backstory about that. And it's just, I was trying to help my mom and, you know, support. I was a terrible student, off the charts. I'm severely dyslexic. I've got every kind of ADHD, everything you can think of, I have times 10, right? Which when I was growing up, they were like, let's put Andy in the special classes, da-da-da. It is a superpower in business, and I had to figure that out for myself. So now, if that's you, you just got to train it. It's a muscle. And once you have it, good luck trying to stop it. It is impossible. So it's awesome. So that's a little bit about me. I got big in the restaurant, like, you know, world. My whole life, I wanted to be a fireman. Like, I'm going to be a fireman. Screw school. I don't care. Get me to the fire academy at 18, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm working at this restaurant, and I fall in love with wine. I go to a wine tasting, right? Wine tasting for the restaurant, super high-end restaurant. 6 weeks later, I'm in Bordeaux trying to learn everything there is about wine to be the youngest wine sommelier in the country. So that was when I was 20. When I was 21 years old, I passed the sommelier exam, which is extremely difficult. There was all these old dudes and gals in there, and they're like, what's this kid doing here? Only 6 of us passed. There was like 75 that took the test. And I got up there and just looked back and I was like, what now? Now what? So I have a giant chip on my shoulder. I've had it my whole life. Like, I love shoving it in people's faces. You can't do this. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And when I got into real estate, everybody laughed. Like, oh, the wine guy is going to go do real estate. And I was like, that is all I needed to hear. That was it. So I like to shove it in people's faces. So when I was in the wine world, and I used to own restaurants and I worked for a giant company, I got really burnt out and really unhappy and really giant. I put on like 65 pounds. I had a huge expense account. Literally all I did was eat and drink and like host these giant wine, like, you know, seminars for everybody, which when you're single and you're young, it's an amazing life, right? but man, did it have its toll. And I was sharing with Sean earlier, I was so unhappy for the first time in my life. Like, I'm like, what's depression? I don't even know what depression was. I'm just a happy guy. I'm laying on my couch and I see a commercial for like, do you know what depression looks like? Do you know? And there was a dude with like a blanket on the couch. And I was like, holy shit, that's me. That's my problem. I'm depressed. And I'm like, this is awful. People live like this. This is terrible. So I got into gear and I'm like, I got to fix everything. I called my boss and I was like, I'm not coming in for a month. And he's like, no one's had a month off in the history of this company. I'm like, cool, then I'm done. I was their top producer, right? They're like, you get a month off. I lost like 20 pounds in a month, stopped drinking, got super clear, got healthy as could be. And I'm like, never going back, never going back. So I had saved up some money. I started teaching yoga and racing triathlons. My family, I wasn't married yet, wasn't married, no kid. They thought I'd lost my mind. I mean, I was sued every day. I was the guy, right? Ego out to here. I did a lot of ego work, a lot of work on myself. And then I got to discover, like, who am I? Like, and what do I want? That was my biggest thing. Like, I got to really learn about myself. I also got really poor along the way because I was burning through all of my savings. And a buddy of mine, this was a year and a half, by the way, of just like trying to figure out life and I just gave myself permission. What's the worst that's going to happen? I can always go back to work. I can always go back to work in a restaurant. I can go bartend. I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to starve to death, right? So I gave myself permission to learn about myself and what I want. So I go into this like deep meditation because a buddy of mine was like, what about real estate? He's like, you're a super smart guy. You've like owned like all this stuff and companies. And he goes, I know people that are absolute morons that make 100 grand a year, and you could still do all your like stuff and your yoga and your hippie stuff, and you could still go like race your bike and do all those things. And I was like, huh, I never thought about real estate because I was close to taking a gigantic corporate job. I didn't want to do it, but I was also out of funds. So I went in, like my backyard had a huge fire, and I got a simple yes. I said, should I go into real estate? It was as clear as day, yes. I walked into my house, hopped on the computer, and signed up for a test. This is 2008, by the way. The market had just imploded, but I didn't really know that, because I was teaching yoga, like I was so unplugged. I didn't have any idea, which was such a blessing because I went into like the pit. I went into the fire and I learned. So long story short, soon as my license fully was like set to go here in like Southern California, I had about $400 left in the bank. I mean, it was a wrap. I was either going to make this work or we were going to have some problems. So I went all in on real estate, and I went in to learn with investors first. As soon as I got licensed, I was like, I'm going to learn how to be an investor. I'm not going to wear a name tag. I'm going to go into this side. And I went to work. I worked like a crazy person. I wanted to learn how to like speak all these different languages of real estate. So I got there, and I got there quickly. I took this little company that we had with two of my friends. They were flipping about 10 houses a year to sometimes 20. We together used all of our superpowers and scaled that thing to flipping about 160 a year at our peak. Now we're buying buildings, doing syndications. But I got a great, like, that's 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 was insane. So there's so much to that, but it's also like anybody can do it. I've seen so many, this is such a common story, right? You're like, oh, this is like my third career was real estate or my 12th career. But as soon as you get in, as soon as I started to like learn the math of real estate, learn the freedom, learn how hard it is, which I like because it keeps a lot of the people out. And when the market's really good, it brings everybody in. And then we just had a nice little shakeout, which I think is going to continue. So that is such a blessing because the true professionals, the people that are in the game for real, you grab market share, you take that stuff back. I'm so excited about this year. Every doom and gloom and headlines, and I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. That person's going out of business, that person's going out of business, and it's all coming to me, all of it. So it's up here. Like what you tell yourself is real, is very real. You guys have a great leader. tons of positivity. He goes out there, he crushes. He's like, there's so many poser leaders in this business. It's painful. They like will say this, they'll say that, and they don't put in any work. It's just like, it's like the office. It drives me bananas. Anyways, I digress. So that's a little bit about me. I have a super long story. I have a crazy podcast where I've told my entire life on. I mean, I'm a super like transparent person. I've cried a million times from stage. Like I get really into what I'm doing with a ton of passion, and I just let it fly. So, and I don't give a shit. I crushed my ego years ago. This is just me in a nutshell. So like tools for you guys to actually use and leverage: social media. So a quick little like segue into how I got into this was I was doing so well for my investors, built this giant portfolio. I mean, I was crushing it. The only people that knew who I was were my investors, my business partners, a couple people in town, but that was it. And then I had my first son, and I was just like, there's got to be more to this, you know. And you know, something changes as soon as you're a dad. Like, I mean, I wanted to build an empire after that. I was like, no one's going to stop me. So I started to think more about like long-term stuff, and you know, so I was just thinking differently. And I would stay up until the wee hours of the morning. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, and I'm like, how am I going to figure this out? You know, I'm like 40 years old. I don't know any of this stuff. I didn't have a website. I had nothing, zero tech, anything. Barely had an email. So this dude kept falling into my feed, Gary V. Fuck this, and I'm a shit student. I love wine. I was like, dude, who's this guy? This is my guy. And I just started to consume his content. There was a lot of it, you know, and I just, for whatever reason, I just clicked with that dude. I didn't really know who he was yet. And I was like, there's something there. So I was trying to get a meeting with them, and they're like, yeah, that's impossible. I'm like, well, what if I pay like 10 grand, like for like an hour? They're like, okay, cool, fly out to New York. And I was like, okay, sweet, tell me when. So we figure out this stuff. I just started to kind of try to figure this thing out. So I just hired like a full-time like filmer. I didn't know what he was going to film, but you know, he said hire one, so I hired one, and like that was it. But that's where my journey started. So I fly out to New York, was there for 3 days. He let me come back and talk to all of his executives, his staff, everything. It was an amazing experience. But what my like biggest takeaway is, he goes, dude, you have an incredible story and you know a ton. Like you are a true, like legitimate expert in the space of real estate. He goes, now what you do is you fly home and you put it out to the world like you're a crazy person. Every day, all day, every platform, every dollar you can spend, and give it all away for free. All your trade secrets, all the crazy stuff that's like no one knows about, just get it out for free. Everything. I'm like, all of it, like all this stuff that I've like cried to try to like fix all of it. And so I just followed Gary's blueprint for literally till today. I continue to just do it. It's like, whatever, it's worked. It's always going to work. Some of the cool stuff that I'm going to share with you about my journey will hopefully save you hundreds of thousands of dollars of my mistakes that I made and all the shit I had to eat to figure this stuff out. So that's why I love to come on here and be like, hey, don't do this. This is a giant waste of time and money. This is what's working right now, but you might want to do some research in 90 days because this stuff is always changing. There was stuff that worked so well, and if you put it out there, it literally gets blacklisted now. And that was like the thing before. So unfortunately and fortunately, you kind of got to stay on top of this stuff. But you also have to give yourself permission to consume it. This is where a lot of people make mistakes, big mistakes. I'm on social media. My wife was like, I'm so sick of you on your damn phone. And I go, look, I know it doesn't look like work, but I'm working right now. I'm consuming this. I'm trying to figure out, why did this post do this? Why did this person? So I would follow people's content that I knew it was actually working. So that's called research and development. You can do that in a book. I mean, I had huge blowout fights with people over this. I'm like, what's the difference in me sitting here on social media learning? Because this is how I learn. I'm a visual person. This is how I learn. So what's the difference in me sitting here with a book, reading it like, what is it? I like Russell Brunson. I like ClickFunnels. I tried to read that book. I'm not a reader. I could listen to it all day. I'll fall asleep. I will literally 2 pages, I'm out. So this is how I learned. But I had to rework that in my brain to give myself permission to do that. So I actually put it in my schedule, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening to consume social media. 4 hours a day all I was doing for an entire year was consuming. Why did that work? What, like a 7-year-old? Why? How come? Why? And then I was like, how do I get in front of these people? And I got a tip from this dude, Lewis Howe. I went to his conference. He and I jammed for whatever reason. And he's like, dude, start a fucking podcast. And I was like, huh? He's like, that's how I started all this. I started my podcast, started sending people emails. They came on my show, and then I used that person to get the next person, and that person to get the next person. And before I knew it, I was getting paid a lot of money to have a show. And I was like, no way that fucking works. Sure as shit. Started a podcast. Season 1 was me and the microphone, and that was it. Season 2, I started to feel like way more comfortable, started to send messages to people. And now I have like a brand. And then the brand was able to scale because of that. And then my book. So all this stuff stacks. But that journey would have never happened if I didn't have given myself permission to consume social media as a business tool. People consume social media as a distraction and as an escape. I get it. Very easy. Same thing with food and gambling and drugs and booze and sex. Like, you name it, there's escapes for it. Some people like to binge watch Netflix. That is escapism. Whatever. I don't judge. But when I'm literally there as a business tool, all the stuff that I do is on purpose. When I started putting my children into my Instagram stories and showing the backside of me, like as a dad, as a husband, like that is when my brand exploded. Because it wasn't just me, the smart business guy that did that was already up here. I'm now showing them the daily journey of my life. And I haven't stopped since I started.
Andy, when you, because this is actually, I love this because you never really hear this. And to be honest, I've been like that opposite guy that's like, stop consuming so much, but it's because of the escapism. And it's not that everybody has the right to have escapism. That's not the issue. It's just when it takes over your life and you're not working, and like you said, it becomes a vice. Can you talk about maybe a little bit how you analyze that? Like, what are you taking? Like, when you look at a piece of social media that real estate or not real estate related, and you're like, okay, well, this one has 1 million views, so that's obviously good. But how do you analyze and how do you bring that into your business then? Is it just R&D, like rip off and duplicate? I'm just going to create the exact same thing with your spin. How do you bring that into your business?
Yeah, super good question. There was a big thing for me was like, I was consuming so much. It went from 2 to 4 to 6. I mean, I went all in. It's how I'm wired. I have gear 1 and gear 6. I don't have anything in between. I'm either like thinking about it, I'm doing 20 miles an hour, or I'm like 180 up the left side of the freeway, right? So for me, like, yeah, no, I know. That's how we get along. So, because here's the thing, like, I like the way that feels. I like it on my shoulders. Sometimes it will bring me to the fetal position and tears for the pressure and the stress, but like, it's how I'm built. So I can pretend like that's not me, or just, that's it. That's how I roll. But for me, I was consuming so much, and I'm like, I don't know how this is, like, how does this even work? So I used my leverage of going to see Gary Vee, right? Made really good friends with his top executives, his core, like the brilliant minds of VaynerMedia. And a little secret is I literally brought Gary this unbelievable gift, and it was a Jets helmet that was signed by all the players when they won the Super Bowl in the 70s. And like, he's like, holy shit, I have the whole thing on film and enough. And then every single person that I met, I sent this like really cool stone and crystal to with like a handwritten letter, and it was on their desk. And like, I was going there on purpose with a mission, because I knew I was going to have questions later, and I'm not paying 10 grand again for a meeting. So what I did is I started to email them. I'm like, how does this work? And then they would respond. What about this? And then they would respond. But I just look at people's content that actually worked, and again, rip off and duplicate. But I still didn't really understand, like, well, why is it working? And then I got to like the brass tacks of it. Some of these people are spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in content creation and distribution and everything else. So I'm like, that's interesting. So I started to dive deeper into how all that stuff looked. It was very easy for me to start to like snuff out the posers too. So there was this whole way where I was just looking at it, but I was also trying to build this like global brand, and I'm going to be the real estate investor guy everybody's going to come to. So I had this whole like completely different strategy than I do now. So for like your team and your crew, like you don't need to have a like massive global reach, right? You need to crush where you're at to effective it. And everybody gets stuck in the followers and everybody gets stuck in this. If you have 2,000 followers that like really give a shit about you, that is the most powerful tool you can have. And you will service your community. And then you'll do these little things, and then you'll go to these storefronts. Hey, I'm sitting out in front of, Sam and Jan's. I've been coming here since I was a kid. I love this sandwich shop, blah, blah, blah. Tag them and send. And then like I love local business updates. Local, like they're so low-hanging fruit, it's crazy. But you got to get out of your own way first. That's the hard part. Hard part is being okay with being really, really shitty and really scared.
So one of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning, and I think it's important to bring up, is that you really turned this into a business. And you went to a media mogul, basically like Gary Vee, to learn what he does, and then you implemented a lot of that stuff into yourself. I know because we've had multiple conversations, I know you're a hyper scheduled guy like I am, so that's the way we keep on track, right? Do you have a method to your madness when it comes to how many posts you're doing per day? Is your entire month, year, quarter, week, what does the schedule look like? Because I know your social media is almost like a separate business within the business, and you kind of treat it like that, right? Yes. So could you explain to us how much of your time is dedicated to that? How scheduled it is? Just giving us a picture of what that looks like, if you don't mind.
Sure. A lot less than it used to be. It used to be insane. It was a huge piece of my day. It was crazy. And then again, I was sitting across a podcast from a very, very smart lady, and she goes, how many times do you do this? I'm like, at least twice a week. And she goes, oh my goodness, this is all you do. And I'm like, yeah, my business is actually struggling right now, but I got a brand and I'm doing this. And she goes, you should schedule all of them for just one day, have a bunch of coffee, bang them out, and then you're good. And that clicked in my brain. I was like, duh, you could do that? So from that day forward, and then it got me so good on camera because I would go from this. So now we film on Tuesdays from 10 to 12, whatever. I bring 3 different jackets or a couple little changes of clothes. And I'm like, stop reading headlines. I'm so sick of these conversations around inflation and what's going to happen in the interest rates. And I'll go hard for 2 minutes, right? And then I'll be like, are you so tired of these buyers in your ears about this bullshit and what's going to happen? I'm going to weigh them up. So I'll crush 15 pieces of content, right? And then we'll chop them up. And that's usually for about a month, because you can't go too far ahead, as we know in this business. I had some great content, and it leaked out right when everything was kind of getting shitty. And I was like, this is going to be the greatest year ever. And I was like, let's go ahead and move that one. As the market's like, ba-da-ba-da-da. But it's just one of those things where plus you have to do what works for you. I have multiple businesses, 2 kids, I'm busy, but this is also so important to what I'm doing. I am trying to break into one of the hardest areas, in my opinion, in Southern California. There's 4 agents that have been doing business around here where my office is now. I plopped my office on the main road, all glass, right in their zone for 30, 40, and 50 years. I've only been doing residential this for 3. And it happened at a Tom Ferry Summit. I'm speaking at Summit. I'm doing all this stuff. It's a quick little story I'll share with you guys. It was I was investor, huge syndications. That's all I was doing. And I was tired and I was burnt out and I was over it. I was tired. And I'm speaking of this thing in the backstage. I just started talking to these guys. I'm like, how much did you make? How much did you make? you have a 4-person team and you did 2 million. And I go, wait a minute. And then I start talking to other people in the room that I knew, also knew weren't that smart. And I was like, Jiminy Christmas, you guys are crushing. So I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start a team. I went backstage talking to Tom. He's like, you're gonna do what? I go, I'm gonna start a residential real estate team. Tom, he looks at me dead in my eyes. He goes, why? And I go, I'm bored. He's like, you come to my office so we can sketch this out because this is gonna be way harder than you think. And I was like, whatever, Tom. He was 100% correct. This is hard. It's a hard business. I didn't know it. So my plan was to use this brand that I had built in my city, but they only knew me as the investor. I was still like the real estate guy, but they knew me from a different clip. Now there's like signs in front yards with my face on it, and all my investor friends are bagging on me. It's like, oh, you're doing real estate now, you're a listing agent. I'm like, yep, sure am. I'm also this, I'm also this, I'm also this. I'm just adding to my repertoire of tools and ammunition. And then when the market moves and they got cleaned out because they were flipping, and I'm like, oh, what now? So like, again, these chips I have are so, I will send text messages to people. I'm like, oh, like I'll wait years. I'm patient. I'll just wait years to get them back. But if you want to be successful in the space of real estate, you're already here. You're already 80% there because you're in a good organization with good leadership and good systems and good processes. Do you know how hard that is to build? I'm doing it right now. It is so painful. I'm a really smart guy and I make a lot of money. It's still very difficult. So you're already light years ahead because you're here. You're with Sean. Like he's already taken a bunch of punches to the face. Like you don't need to. Yeah, right, literally. So like you don't need to. So all you need to do now is brand yourself. Be your biggest cheerleader, right? That is going to make you become the hyper local expert to people that will know you, like you, and trust you. Use Instagram stories, use Facebook stories. If you want to do YouTube, do YouTube.
So if you were to pick one particular, I hear it from you quite often when you're talking, is the hyper local thing is probably the best response. And I think a lot of us, including myself, our egos get in the way because we don't have 50,000 followers or 1 million followers or something. But, I have somebody on my team, one that just, he's got maybe like 50 followers on YouTube and he's already picked up 2 deals off of it, right? And you look at that and you just start laughing at 50 followers doesn't mean anything, but it's just because it's so specific. All of those followers will use him to buy or sell in the future. If you could, because right now podcasts are becoming very popular here as well. If you could tell like the agents what should they be doing right away on the social media or on social media platforms? Should they be doing podcasts? What would you recommend? Or is that kind of a little bit past date now? What would you say is the best route?
You have to know yourself. You really have to know who you are. That's super important. I love the podcast. I love it. I used to stutter severely as a kid. I mean, I had to work through so much stuff. But for me to podcast, it's a weird platform. It's also, I think, one of the most powerful. I love to listen to stuff because it's how I learn. And you can listen to a podcast in the car, you can listen to it at your desk, you can listen to it at the gym, you can listen to it on a walk or a hike. I mean, you can consume it pretty easily. And when you're in a great podcast and you're like absolutely vibing with that person, it's special. You can feel it. It's like visceral. So the secret for me of why I like launched that thing was the same thing with Gary Vee. He's like, dude, you got to start a podcast, put out all that stuff for free. And he told me something, changed my life. And I get choked up every time I talk about this. I'm sure one day I won't, but it's been years. I can't help it. He's like, this is going to live on forever. He's like, the first time in human history, your podcast will get consumed by your great, 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 great granddaughter. And if she's like you, it's over. So for me, I'm like, holy fuck, I'm scrapbooking digitally for my entire generations to pass. Like, I would give you $1 million this second in cash in a giant bag if I could hear one podcast from my grandparents. One. Like how they met in World War II in their words. And man, on those hard days, when I'm like really struggling, I'm like, if I just had hit play. So for me, that's everything. Because there's days I'm like, man, I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like putting out more shit. And I look at my office and I see my kids and I'm like, you better get your ass to work, son. You better get up. And like, that's it. So I do it. Podcasts are a sleeping gem. There's been studies, and that's why you're seeing a lot of videos out there now on Instagram and YouTube and blah, blah, blah. If you, I don't think I have a microphone in here. I'll just pretend like this water bottle. If you're doing a video and you have a microphone here, they've tested this. Just a microphone. It could be totally unplugged, not even plugged in. It was a 67% clip on that you are more of an expert on what you're talking about because you're talking into a fucking microphone.
I love it.
Proven, like proven. And I was like, that's interesting, right? It's just, it's how people, oh, they must know what they're talking about because they're talking into a microphone. Like, that's some low-hanging fruit. Here's a hack, though, that I love, especially if you're like a newer agent or you're a super seasoned. They have these, they're called like Blue Yetis, right? It's like a Blue Yeti microphone. They're kind of small, but we tested this about probably 3.5 years ago now. We did podcasts at open houses. So what we do is we would put like the podcast microphone right in the kitchen island, right? And there'd be a laptop and it'd be plugged in and it'd be showing some stuff on it. We'd barely even be recording anything. But what it did is it made us memorable. And so we would talk to the neighbors. Hey, oh, so do you live in the neighborhood? So, oh yeah, like on this street. Oh, awesome. So we're doing a specific podcast for this neighborhood. We would love to hear about it. They come over, you're talking, oh, that's really cool. That's nice. If they saw 6 open houses that day, right? Which one do you think they remembered?
100% yours. So you were interviewing them on this podcast.
I was having a kitchen conversation that I would have with them anyways at the open house, but there was a fancy laptop open and there was a Blue Yeti microphone plugged in with a green light that said it was on. The audio was trash. I was using it to be remembered. We were using it to this, and the agents that did it crushed. And then like sometimes you get like the sweet old lady that wanted to tell you everything about every person. Oh, this person's going to sell. Oh, that'd be great. Like, again, there's a lot of noise out there, folks, on social media. How will you be different? And even just a little bit different. But I say this a ton. I just gave a big talk on this exact topic in Las Vegas. You gotta be you. Like, don't try to be me. Don't try to be Sean. If like you don't like to go into like the mountains and go if that's not you, please don't do that. And if you're on TikTok and you're dancing because you think you're going to get likes and views, please don't do that. Like, I had to like literally talk this guy down. He's like, but I'm so boring. I'm everything is this in spreadsheets. And I go, I love those. You want to know why? Because I hate spreadsheets. So I want you to tell me. You think it's dumb and boring. I think it's awesome. But you got to be you. I go, there are people that make millions of dollars just spitting out boring ass data.
Mm-hmm.
And in the space of real estate, there's people that literally work behind the computer, and then all the extroverts, they're doing the showings, and you can nerd yourself in the office in the dark all day and make a lot of money.
And so really you're trying to, and I think we've talked about this before in the past, is just finding that tribe that relates to you. So when you put out content, you want to find a lot of the people that would relate to you. And I say this quite often when it comes to any kind of marketing, is that so many people become vanilla trying to relate to everybody that they end up relating to nobody because it's just another filter, right? But you are very much Andy, like very much who you are is out there, right? And when it comes to this, and let me ask you this because I hear this all the time, and obviously there is some importance behind it, is this algorithm, always trying to beat the algorithm, always trying to whatever. Do you focus on a lot of that, or you just focus on the content that is you and you just try to be consistent with it? Like, do you do a lot of market research when it comes to, because you obviously have connections on every level when it comes to the social media side? Are you trying to do hacks like posting at 7 a.m. is the best time? And like, different kind of weird stuff like that may or may not work? Or are you mainly focusing on the content and making sure that you put out enough and it's good?
Yeah, so super, super good question. We focus on it all. That's how you actually win. But we didn't start like with a PhD. We started in first grade. We started as a little kid. Why? How come? How does this stupid thing work? Why does it matter if I post at 9? Again, this goes back to permission. Do you give yourself permission to learn? Did you give yourself enough runway to win? I gave myself 7 years to figure this out. Not 7 weeks, not 7 months, 7 years. People underestimate grossly what they can accomplish in 5 years. Grossly. I went from poor, no more money, to I never have to work a day again from a long time ago. But to speak to those points, it's like you have to start and then you learn. It's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym for 2 hours, just sit there with crunches and leave with a 6-pack. It's food, it's diet, it's those things. But again, it goes back to permission. If you give yourself permission to learn and you're putting your mind in that state, if you're out of the state of fear, there's been, again, I'm going to quote studies like crazy because I'm a nerd for this stuff because I want the science to back up what I'm saying. The happiest human beings are, the happiest, proven, is when you're in the constant pursuit of learning something. It's when we're the most open, when you're learning how to be a new dad, when you're learning how to be a new mom, and you're like, what in the shit? Like the first time your kid rides a bike, that's you learning to let them maybe fall. When we're in this like visceral pursuit of like some kind of higher education of something, we are the happiest. And when I heard that, that was great because I like to learn new shit. But I've also given myself wild permission to be absolutely terrible when I start and not beat myself up over it. Because I knew this journey. I'm like, how the hell did you do an open house? I'm like, you don't know anything? I'm like, I know nothing. So I stay very humble and very teachable, and I get around people and I learn.
And to that point, because I think this is very important, is that when you have nothing, everybody is teachable or egos aren't there and so on and so forth. But you went from one of the most successful flippers, investors, especially in your area, probably within the country, and are, very well off, etc. And now you're basically a buyer's agent or whatever the introductory of it, and learning how to do an open house and so on and so forth. That's actually very difficult because you've already been the top of the top in something, and to kind of humble yourself to be in that position. And I feel like a lot of the greats are always in this working, challenging, and I think learning, like you said, is going to be something that's always important. But it's also, I feel like a lot of learning is attached to challenges as well, because it is a challenge, and that's always made me the happiest. And I've kind of preached that from day one. If to kind of diverge from this, you mentioned before that there's a lot of things, a lot of shiny objects in real estate. Everybody's trying to sell you stuff. Everybody's trying to do it this way. What are some of the biggest things that realtors should avoid? How can they save the hundreds of thousands of dollars, like you mentioned, and not blow your load on this kind of project or whatever it may be? What do you think we should do?
Yeah, it is a humongous passion of mine to have realtors stop buying stupid shit and then let their tenants pay for everything. And so I have a whole entire rant on this, but I'm going to put a pin in this too, because I have this thing that dropped in when you were talking. So it's like, again, it goes back to being who you are in your tribe and speaking to them and not speaking to everybody. There was this lady, very nice lady, very sweet, right? Obsessed with dogs, absolutely obsessed with dogs. Everybody in her neighborhood knew her. She was petrified to go on these listing appointments. And I was just like, look, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find your dog people, the dog park and whatever. And that's going to be the only thing you do is talk about that. She took 2 multi-million-dollar listings because she brought me just to make sure, she didn't mess up. The only thing that she was allowed to talk about was dogs and like the people's dogs that were there. And then I asked afterwards, how come you hired us? She's like, well, we talked about dogs. So not all my marketing and all my flashy stuff, dogs. So when you are authentically you and you're only like, it could be anything. Focus on that 100% because that will get you commissions. That'll get you income. And then as your income rises, you're going to want to buy dumb shit. You're gonna want to have the car and sushi. It's commission check day. We're going to dinner and blah blah blah. I got it, right? Got it. Totally get it. So when I decided to build this thing and get very humble with already enough money to never work a day in my life, my wife was like, "You're gonna go do what? Why?" I go, "I think you know me by now. I'm starting to get bored." And I do one of two things. I build something else, or I burn everything to the ground, then I rebuild it. So I go, "You get to pick." She goes, "Have fun." So that's exact. So, but again, that took learning. I could feel in my body. I'm like, one of these companies, I'm gonna make it explode, just so I can have something new to do. Which over time you learn, like, it's way easier just to go in a different direction. So I like to tax myself, right? I take certain percentages, old school thing from Tony Robbins, like old school. But if like the US government all of a sudden tomorrow taxed everybody in Canada, everybody just an extra like 10%, what are you gonna do? Not pay it? End up in jail? No, you're gonna pay it for sure. So what I like to do is set up like separate accounts. There was an account I forgot about, and this is gonna sound super douchey, but I forgot about it. It would just pull a certain amount out. Literally went to go open up a new account, and my guy at the bank was like, "Hey, this thing's just sitting here." And I'm like, "What is?" It was $97,000 in there. And I was like, "Oh my goodness." Took it out, bought a 4-unit. So it actually did what it was supposed to. But when you do that, it does something to your mind. When you start living below your means, and it never sounds good, no one wants to live below their means, you can either produce more and save more and create more, or you can live below your means. I'm more of a more guy. Like, how do I create more so I don't have to live below my means? But until you get there, you got to put some governors on yourself. And the fastest way I've seen to do so is not the stock market, is not Bitcoin, is not anything else. It is hard assets. Hard assets. When I refinanced my entire portfolio, and I have an interest rate of a 2 in front of almost all of them, some of them have a 3, and people are crying the blues about a recession, and the only thing that's going to protect against the recession is a hard asset, I'm like, I'm good. My family is in a bulletproof position. But that took time. But by you saving your commission checks, let's say you make 100 grand a year, save 20. Save 20 and figure out a way to buy some 2, 3, or 4 unit properties. Here in the US, they have 3.5% financing for like whatever, first time home buyers and FHA and these things. And you can do but Andy, never gonna have enough. Well, in 5 years, you save 20 grand a year, you do this, you do that. Like, everybody wants it now. And if you want it now, that's fine. Find financial partners. The first like 10 deals that I bought, I put no money in, but I had the deal. And then you build that. The coolest thing about the space of real estate right now that I'm preaching from the mountaintops is like, how do you build culture within an organization like Sean's, where it's like, what if you have a team that's doing really well, and the team, they go buy a property together, they buy a 2, 3, or 4 unit, they have a separate LLC, and now your team, everybody's chipping in commission checks to then go buy stuff. You blink, this happened to a team that we were coaching in Downey. They now own 7 4-unit properties. And now, like, they fight like family, like everybody does and whatever. But you got to think twice when you're like, do I want to leave this team? Like, we're actually doing pretty good, And you're also creating wealth. The thing that I love the most about real estate, especially the past 2.5 years, is like, when it's good, it's real good. And even when it's bad, as long as everything's covered by the tenants, it's still real good. If you look at the history of real estate in Canada from like 1950 until today, if you look at the history of real estate from 1950 until today in the US, it's a joke. It is an absolute joke.
Nothing comes close.
Nothing. The tax benefits, just the way it feels. Plus, like, you know what? If everything went sideways, and and we lost everything, like, I have properties we can go into. We have I have plan Bs for days for every one of my family members.
And so, I mean, one thing that you brought up that I feel like, lately I've been talking a lot about is realtors have like this flamboyant type of lifestyle that they're way above their means in many, many cases, right? And I'm not here to preach on what other people do. That is what you do. However, I'm trying to give out this financial advice because I've seen so many, there's an 83% attrition rate in real estate here anyways, within your first 3 years. And I see people like you said, we had a historic uptick in these last couple of years that have just been mind-boggling. And most people, especially if they started in that, that's what they think it's always going to be like, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you're in Long Beach, you're surrounded by billionaires and millionaires and so on and so forth, right? And obviously you've done very well. That area, I can see it be very difficult to be humbling in. We obviously have areas that are very expensive here too. Our average price point is still in the millions, but a lot of agents, I feel like they come in and it's a joke in our industry, buying the white BMW and all this other kind of stuff.
It's the same here. It's the same.
It's the same, right? So how, and they think like they feel they need that to be accredited or they need that to have any kind of credit with the clients or people that they're dealing with. In a neighborhood like yours, which is definitely more upper class, right? Is that something that you feel people need? I know the answer is already no, but can you tell us how you're still getting business? I know you're using your name and how you've been flipping and doing all this other business, but how are you still getting business? How are you communicating it via social media? How are you putting it out there without blowing your money on things that don't matter?
Yeah, so it's for me, it's like facts and data and truth and who am I? Like since the beginning, my clients have never given two shits what car I drive, ever. They care about what is in my brain that's going to make them money, period, the end. We as an industry think that the shinier it is, the smarter we're going to be, or that it is just proven over and over again. It's just not true. And I got really lucky. So one of my mentors, when I first got into the game, drove the nastiest, beat up like Honda Civic. The only reason he even kept it is because you could type in a property address and still drive. That's how old it was. It still had that software. That's why it was beat to tar. He looked almost homeless with beard. He was a savant, like brilliant in the space of real estate. We would literally pull up to these giant deals we were putting together, and they would always walk up to me because I was dressed up like a little nicer and be like, "Hey, it's so nice to meet you." I'm like, "Nope, that's the guy." And they're like, "What? That's the guy?" And I'm like, "This is Elliot." But it was like, it was cool because he didn't care and I didn't care. And then we had these two other business partners that had their Lamborghinis and their Porsches and their Ferraris. Like we're all making I had like a Ford Explorer, I had a nice car. Whatever. Got me from point A to point B. I've never really been a humongous car guy. I'm more of a real estate guy, right? I want assets. My tenants will buy me a fleet of whatever car I want for the rest of my children's life. That for me is so much cooler. And once you start to talk to people that have real wealth and real money, those cars are literally tax write-offs. Most of them aren't driven. They either have to buy that or give it to the government. So they're like, fuck it, give me another one. It's different. And you can tell when you pull up in a Ferrari and you're kind of wealthy, or you pull up in a Ferrari and you're off the charts wealthy, you get out different. You give a shit different. You park it different. Everything's different. So for me, I watch all these people's energies. You can fake it till you make it for a little while. But at some point, you're going to just need to know the data cold. If you roll to a listing appointment and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm like Bob and Sue. They bought this house 3 years ago. Here's what it was." And you're just jamming with them. You're like actually bonding with your client over what we're supposed to be bonding with, trust and building trust. If you go out and you hop in a truck, they don't give a shit. And the real winners will respect it more. I got more compliments to be like, "We thought you'd be driving something different." And sometimes you'll never know. I had this one lady, she's an absolute sweetheart. She hired me because the dude before me pulled up in a red Ferrari. She goes, "That's going to drive my husband crazy."
I love it.
So it's like, it's this person, like when you're like I am the best. I am the expert. Nothing else matters. And people care about their money. Period. The end. How much they're going to lose or how much they're going to make. All the other stuff is noise. And the faster you can get to that with them, the faster you can build that trust and rapport.
Okay, so last question while I have you on, and thank you again for coming on. This has been awesome. Okay, so let's say I have 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. The market definitely has shifted. It looks like it's starting to pick up here. I'm hearing that
same with us.
With you guys down there as well. But right now, there's a million different things we can invest in. What would you be investing in, or what are you doubling down on your current business or whatever it may be in this market versus what you were doing before, if there is anything? Also, yeah, if you can spend your money now, or should you be doubling down now? What are you putting your money into in this market versus the previous markets a couple of years ago?
Yeah. So like there are good deals and bad deals in every market. I buy when the market's going up, down, sideways, doesn't matter. Deals are deals are deals are deals. When you become a deal junkie and you become obsessed with the math around it, it almost doesn't matter. And then he or she who can get creative with financing will win, win, and win big. You also have to look what's happening in society, right? Probably wouldn't buy an office building right now unless I could convert it, right? So there's like certain things. People fell in love with being at home again for the first time since the 50s, 60s, and 70s. COVID hit. Oh my God, greatest thing to ever happen to real estate in the history of real estate, right? People like, well, I need a 4-bedroom now because I have kids and I do want a home office. I do want a pool. I do want a gym, blah, 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 right? So for me, how do I like facilitate that? Do I want to build it? We have 3 projects right now that are ground up construction. They're the only new construction in the whole city that's going to be available. We're going to have multiples. It's going to be insane. But that's also wildly risky because as soon as the market started to move, I was like, I promised myself I wouldn't make a bad move at the top of the market, and fuck, I'm gonna, right? So like, I got lucky. I'll take it. But I like the value add plays, the easy ones. Down here, there's these things called ADUs. I'm sure you guys have them up there in Canada too. But those little units that you can add, certain cities are great with them. So we like to buy a duplex, right? It's already going to kind of cover. It's going to get close. We throw an ADU on the back, and now it's going to cash flow $2,000 a month after. I like those plays. They're safe. I know what my city's doing. Want to know why? I'm the city expert. I know everything. When you know everything, it's harder to make a bad move. I'm not huge into flipping right now. I don't, that's not my thing. I'm more of a long hold guy, but I have mentors in their 70s and 80s, and they giggle all the time because I go fast, right? And they're like, Andy, all these deals are good in 10 years. Every single one. Every single one, every time. And he's like, they're really good in 20. They always giggle because they bought it for $1 million. Now it's worth fucking $7 million. They did nothing. So like, that's awesome. That's real estate. It stings. There was this dude, he bought a house in my neighborhood for $200,000. This was a very long time ago. And he's like, it was the most expensive house in the city at the time. And he's like, I was up for 6 months trying to figure out how I was going to pay for this. He goes, I had stomach aches. The anxiety was off the charts. $6-point-something million house. And so it's like, it's always going to sting a little. But here's a conversation I've never had with anybody ever. I am so glad I sold that piece of real estate 20 years ago. It doesn't exist, never had it, and probably won't. You know what I mean? So for me, I like to invest in things that are long. I have a very simple buy box. And like, here's the thing. You make mistakes and you shit the bed and you lose big, you start to get very clear on your like risk tolerance and your risk threshold. I bought stuff all over the country. We still own stuff all over the country. But for me, Southern California is still Southern California. Where you guys are at, it is a hotbed. It's going to continue to go up. So invest in that. People are going to be coming from all over your country to your zone, and you want them to call you because of your track record. So my buy box, super, super simple. I want to buy something for $1 million today that in 10 years will be worth $2 million. That's it. Super simple, low risk, easy to accomplish. How fast can I get there? Maybe I do it in 5. But if you buy 10 of those over the next 5 years, or even 10 years, who cares? When you're done in real estate, you have a $10 million piggy bank. That's awesome. So if you're 30 and you want to retire when you're 50 and then do whatever you want for the next 50 years, because we're living a lot longer, like create those things. Don't be the person that's at the open house, who's a million years old, that's been making 100 grand every year for 30 years. That's painful. And for me, that's just pure insanity because we get to see the deals first.
Yeah.
Like, screw your investor.
Yeah, exactly. Invest in yourself first and then somebody else after. So the same question, what about your real estate business? What are you, as far as like buying and selling real estate, your real estate team, all that kind of stuff? What are you doubling down on that? Or if you're not, where are you putting your marketing dollars into that side?
So we're going super, super heavy on print and digital. I love print. I'm an investor. We do letters and cards. If you guys would love to have you guys here at my office sometime, the stuff that we do is off the charts. QR codes are massive. So we have a whole system now where we send you out something like this, right? Just a piece of mail to property we sold. You go on the back, it's got a map. This is like Corp. This is a massive company, but they scan this little QR code. It's like, what's my house worth or blah, blah, blah. That goes to our VA. Our VA runs a CMA. CMA gets sent to the printer here at the office. We have somebody put this beautiful package together with all of our stuff and our material, and somebody goes and hits that door. And we're like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It gets the team out in the streets, right? And then you're filming content while you're out there. Hey, I'm just out here in this neighborhood. All of that is very inexpensive, but it creates that push and pull, right? Digital. I know some incredible agents that went all in on digital, and they speak on stages, and their production went from 60 a year to 3, because they thought in 1 year this whole thing and all this video stuff was going to create a massive amount of income. It takes time. It takes time. But when you blend the two, you start hearing the stuff from everybody's like, Andy, you're everywhere. I'm like, yeah, no shit. If you touch something of ours, I'll track you for 90 days. You'll be pixeled from here to Kingdom Come. But that's what we do. So we do spend a substantial amount of money. I'm also trying to grow brand in this area with some seasoned old dogs. So it's a little bit different. But if I had 10 grand, you'd be surprised the data you get when you drill down, not the whole neighborhood, right? Really get granular with your title reps and who could pull that data from you and put together these cool letters and packages. And then if you hear hey, I got 7 of these this month. Perfect. That's priceless data. Do something else. But still, and you're going to hear this a lot, and it sucks to hear, but it's just the truth. The old school shit, the belly to belly, the just knocking, hey, Mrs. Whatever, that's where it's at. And to do video on Facebook and Instagram with local businesses, it's free. It's a good thing to do. It cements you in there. And then if you want to, have a client party at some restaurant, I would love to bring in 20 people. Hey, is it a slow time between 5 and 6:30? You drop $400 and you get to meet 20 people. Do you know what it costs me to get 20 people into my office for appointments? Tens and tens and thousands of dollars. You either have time or money. And if you have money, you can spend your way in. That's what I'm doing. So I try to avoid the time thing. But if you have time, you go do all the hard shit, because that's what really creates that grind in this business. Grinders will always crush in real estate. Always, no matter what, till the end of time.
And so are you in this market, are you spending more or less than you were in 2020, 2021 when the market was on fire? 2022, 2023, are your budgets increasing, decreasing? Some people are running away and minimizing everything. Some people are blowing up their expenditure. Which one are you? Or in between?
Yeah, so super, super good question. And this is my favorite because this is where I get to use all my tools. So I literally launched this team in November, right before COVID hit. So I'm just getting ramped up and the marketing, everything's kind of going out. And then like March, and I'm like, oh, fuck. I mean, I just built that office. I'm like all ready to go. And I was like, the first thought that hit my head is like, we're tripling all of our budgets. I go, everybody's going to stop. Everybody's going to hibernate. And man, was I right. People are opening up mail for the first time in like decades. They're sitting down, they have nothing to do. And they're all on their phones because they're bored out of their face and they can't leave their house. So we attacked. It worked really, really well. We stabilized those budgets finally, and then just kind of kept going. When the market started to get like really kind of weird and funky, I slowed down because I wanted to watch. So we slowed down for about 30 days, 60 days, something like that. And then I saw the fear, all the agents calling me, oh my God, what are you doing? I'm like, haha, perfect. And then we tripled again, and we are on fire right now. Because like in November, the interest rates are going to be 9. No, they're not. Nope, no way. I'm gonna tell you why. Someone's trying to win an election coming up. There's only so much damage they could do. So like, I like to overspend to build brand, because there's these agents in here now that have been in there for 20, 30, 40 years. They spend 0. I mean, their market, I bet it's less than 10,000 a year. But you have to build. I'm a big fan of reinvesting. I reinvest into my company, like you, Sean. Like you're constantly like, okay, who can I have on who's going to help my team and my company grow? Like you're like, I'm telling you guys, you have such a solid leader, and it's rare as shit. Just so you know, I don't care what company sold you this or Compass or Cola. Like who's ever selling you stuff, don't buy it. It's Kool-Aid. I was in 5 brokerages in 3 years. I can tell you with a fact where I'm at right now is it's the best, because I have control and I like to lead. But I would just get out there, spend your money wisely, but scared money is not a good thing. And when you're reinvesting, it's hard. And I'm like, I get it. It's difficult. You have to make choices at home. But when I'm reinvesting in me and my business and my team and my agents and my community, that just feels good. And what I've learned, I'm a super spiritual guy, super spiritual guy. So when I'm constantly giving and helping to others, it just, it works itself out. Like I've never not been taken care of, not once. My darkest of days, it's never not worked, not once.
I love it. I love it, brother. Thank you so much, man. We already went overtime. I appreciate you being on the show with us again, man. It's a huge learning lesson. I look forward to seeing you here shortly. We're definitely going to have to fly down there and see your office too, man.
Yeah, please.
It. And hopefully we'll get you up to speak at one of our events here shortly as well.
I was so bummed. I was so bummed for the last one I missed. You have no idea. I was really looking forward to that.
We're going to make it happen again for sure. 100%.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Andy.
Anytime, man. Thank you. Thanks, guys.